So officially I'd like to go thank you once again for joining me in this Employees and Authorizations webinar and taking the time out from your busy days. And I'd like to just say it's been an amazing response that we've had. So many people from all over are joining us. And it's very nice once again for everyone to be here and just to catch up on this. I can see some old friends and faces in there, and it's lovely to see some new people joining us as well for this. Before I go and I dive too far into this, if everybody can just go either put up their hand or send me a question or a chat message just to let me know if they can see my screen or not, so that I know I'm not just talking to myself and showing a blank screen. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That is, at least I know now that we are really that you can at least go see me. So, all right, and one final thing before I do dive in, one final thing is please, I do encourage questions and during my sessions. Please, if you do have a question, put up your hand or ask it in the questions box, and I will answer it as soon as it pops through to me, which may take a second or two, but I will try and do my best to make sure that I can answer it as soon as possible. Remember, there are no stupid questions, just questions that aren't asked. So, employees and authorizations. Here we go. Just a quick note on the agenda. We are, I'm sure for a number of you this is going to be old hat, but at least we can go and if at least we can just go get through it, I'm sure maybe there'll be one or two little tips and tricks that we can bring up. We're going to start off going through employees, security users, security roles, how employees, security users and security roles relate to each other, authorization and advanced authorizations, and of course some associated reports. So now, employees, those wonderful people who go and work for our clients and customers and go and bring us such interesting questions. So let's head across to the iVend Management Console, and over here we can go to Administration, Human Resources, Employee. So let's start off by going and actually selecting an employee. In this particular case, I'm going to go choose the store manager. And obviously this is the default employee, and many of you will have seen this employee loaded up when you do your iVend either installations or you actually go and you load up your demo stack. And of course this is the default one that we access the system with. But but obviously the entire idea with an employee is that this is the information about the employee themselves. It's not just the store manager. It should be something more along the lines of Keith Morrison, and then at the end you can go put in the job title. So Grand High Exalted Manager of whatever store it is. Their home address, because that is actually quite important, specifically when you start getting to when to go and contact people, if they haven't arrived at work, whatever the case might be, if they need to be dropped off, if they're carpooling. These are all important bits, and if they have left anything behind at work, which can happen as well. Email, because no employee record, everyone has email these days. Well, most people have email these days. I still find the odd one who doesn't, but that's because I work in Africa. The mobile phone, obviously necessary once again for contact and keeping everyone up to date. Then we move on to department. Now, the departments that we have over here in iVend are just that. They are for reporting. You can go and divide up your employees into different departments as well as your retail profiles into different departments as well. This allows for different reporting and different structures that you can go and have a look and see exactly how things fit together, and also try and associate your best employees in the correct departments. So for instance, an employee who maybe goes and sells more electronics will be best suited in the electronics department, whereas opposed to somebody who is better suited to, say, needlework might need to go to the needlework department. Teams. Now, this is something that I find a lot of people struggle with the first time that we talk about employees, and it's the concept of teams and team banking. And yes, you need to make sure that team banking is ticked if you have assigned them to a team. That's the only way you can go and make sure that that everything actually works when you go and you assign it to the till itself. Now, the entire idea about team banking, and I'm going to refer back to my wonderful slide of deployment that everyone should know and love. But the entire idea is that even in a small store with, say, 2 point of sale, like I have over here, you can still have multiple people in it, say 5 or 10. Normally, we find this happens a lot in your more expensive, higher value goods stores, jewelry stores, electronic stores, hi-fi equipment, things like that, where the sales are a little less regular than your normal FMCG goods, but at the same time the profits made off them are larger. And it's in this case that people actually want to be, they will go up, they'll find a salesman, and the salesman will talk them into buying a specific brand of TV or a watch for their significant other. And with that in mind, you don't, because not as many people, you don't always need to go and have the point of sale immediately available at every hour, at every second of the day. The salesman can go and either take his time a little bit more, or he has the ability to go and control exactly when he needs to go to the point of sale, as opposed to needing to use it all the time. So, and that means that you can go and have them operate in a team. And when you have your salesman in a team, you can have, say, 5 or 6 different people assigned to a different point of sale, depending on the rate that sales take place during the day. A user-specific store, so we can actually assign the specific employee to use a specific store. I have had questions about what happens if you want to move employees between stores. Well, then you need to move the employee from the store. Please don't forget, if you move, you need to make sure that you move them in all the places they're linked to, as well as going and relinking them on tills if they are linked through in user-only mode, but that is quite important. So you need to please remember that, as you can see, not all of the fields here need to be filled out, and in some cases it's almost better to leave, there are better places to go manage the system. Once again, that's entirely up to your discretion as to how you do that. Position. Obviously we can now, obviously this is similar to departments, so we can go and break down people into their different positions, and we can determine exactly how they can go and determine exactly what their best position within the organization is. This starts to come into effect with things like matrix management, and just going and defining exactly how best to go and get people to serve in the organization. Retail profile. As I always go and tell people when I'm demoing iVend to them, is that iVend can define a lot of things down to a per user basis, and this is as low as you can go. The actual retail profile, and with it all its associated settings, including things like your skins as well as your new POS customizations that can go with it, can be defined all the way down here at the employee level. This means that you can go and have one employee who has got one retail profile and will see one specific set of buttons or skins when he logs in to the system. Of course, the idea is not necessarily that you do that, but it is nice to know that you do have the option and the flexibility to do that. Transaction entry is a very important checkbox, because if this is not checked, the employee will not be able to go log in to the point of sale. While the point of sale will say that the username and password were correct, it will just immediately log them straight out again and take them to the flying Rubik's Cube. So please make sure that that is checked. I've had several occasions where people have forgotten to check it and spent hours trying to figure out why they can't process something as simple, or why they can't seem to go and log in correctly to the point of sale. Is the employee active? And this is something that is very important with employees. Is obviously, the entire idea with many companies today is that you try and keep your employees and pay them well over a period of time, but employees, particularly cashiers, seem to have a much higher turnover rate than is normal in other parts of the than in other jobs, and because of this, it is necessary that while you are going and recording this specific employee's details over here, when they leave, you can mark them inactive. And indeed, this is part of going and actually changing the security user, that if an employee leaves and a new one joins, the employee that's left will need to be marked inactive, and the one who's just joined will be active and joined to the security user. But we'll get more onto that in a minute. Team banking I've already covered, and if they use the time clock or not. So the time clock going and saying whether what time they are clocking in or clocking out of the actual system. So if we go over here, user menu, time clock, where we can clock in, go on break, come back from break, and clock out from the system at the end of the day. Next up, whether the employee is a manager or not. This is particularly important to go and define whether the employee can do authorizations and managerial overrides. If the employee is not ticked as a manager, they will not be able to do that. As you can see, this is assigned on an employee basis, not on a security user basis. And finally, we can put, next up we can go put them if they are a salesperson or not. If they are a salesperson and you are integrating to something similar to Business One, then it will go and take the salesperson across into Business One itself. If not, it will go, if the integration like that is not set up, it will merely mark them as a salesperson, and you'll be able to go and select them at the point of sale. Preferred language, well, this is something that we do have that is quite nice, is that you do have the ability to load up whichever language you might want. At the moment we are translated into approximately 20 of these. As you can see over here, we've got Afrikaans from my native South Africa. We're going all the way down to, let me see, Yiddish, Yoruba, and Zama in Niger. So while we don't necessarily have all of iVend translated to all of these, it is actually rather nice that we do have the option to do it. And certainly with our enthusiastic partners, I look forward to going and seeing many more of these languages filled out in the coming future. Finally, we get to a new setting over here, which is to allow the end of day from the point of sale. This is where you can actually run the completed end of day process from the point of sale itself, as opposed to having to come to the management console and run it in here. The entire idea about this is that this would rather be for a smaller store, a one POS store, where there's one person using it and they can run the end of day themselves without having to go run through the entire system and go and open up management console to do it that way. As you can see over here, I've also added in various job codes, and once again this has added in additional flexibility to how I can report on exactly what this employee is up to and make sure that he is using his time wisely and efficiently. I'm not going to spend too much time on employee positions, teams, and job codes, because as you can see over here, they are fairly simple screens, just needing a code or a description. And it's very much the same way with the team. Once you've defined the team, it's merely a code and a description. And then finally, the job code itself, where the main difference between the previous two is that you can actually go and mark whether the specific job code is active or not. So there may be times where, obviously over time, as things change, certain job codes may fall out of use. So that may well be the case today. Certainly I know that photographic developers, their roles have changed quite drastically in the last 10 or 15 years with the advent of digital cameras. So now that we've covered employees and what exactly it takes to go set them up, we now move on to the next step to go and actually talk about our security users. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these security users these security users are joined to our employees, but these security users are the actual users that we use to log into the system. As you probably well know, when you log in with user 1 and the password, as opposed to going and using USR001, as you can see is my user code over here in the user field. So over here we go and we set the login ID, the password, the electronic ID for if we're connecting through to various things such as our magnetic swipe cards, the security role, which I will come to next, and as well as connecting through our user or employee. Right. Next up, we can also define whether the security user must use the magnetic swipe card to log on. So this is to go and add additional security to the actual point of sale system. This is something to go stop people going and sharing their username and passwords, or more likely just never changing their password, at which point people can log in and get away with murder on the system. Is the security user still active? And please remember that if you go and you mark a security user inactive and leave the employee that's attached active, the employee will still not be able to log in. And same way that if the employee is marked inactive and the security user is marked active, you will still have problems going and logging in. Please be careful to go and cross-check your fields to make sure that they remain consistent. Can the security user change their password or not? So can you go and force them to use a specific password? Have they been locked for whatever reason? And next up we get to one of the nice one of the wonderful features in iVend that allows us to go set up things such as a training user and a training user database. Now the entire idea behind this setting is not to go and use it for the initial product training of an entire company. This is for when a new user joins a presently existing site where they can go and actually be taught and trained on how to use the present system in a training database. So it would be an already established store with an already established system where the user can go log in, can log in with their security user set to training user, conduct their training, see exactly how things work or that they need to change or that they need to understand, and then they can go onto the production database and actually process properly without having to go find out and ask all these wonderful questions like, what does this button do? Finally, the last option over here is both, where you can actually give the user an option to log into either the training database or the production database at your initial login screen. Now, please remember that when you generate the training database, right, you will need to update it from time to time because it will not remain updated by itself. You will need to go and update it to just make sure that it is ready and waiting for people, that it is ready and waiting for when the person logs in. Fortunately, that's easy enough. We have provided this handy button over here where you can click Update Training Database and it will initiate and update that database. Next up, we can go and ask, is this an enterprise user or not? So I'm fairly sure that everybody here knows what that is. Or are they assigned to a specific store, or are they a floating user? Do they use the management console? Remember, once again, if you're not marked to use the management console, you won't be able to log in on it, no matter how many rights you have. Do they use the dashboard web viewer? Something that is becoming more and more popular, specifically for the people higher up in management who rely more on their reports than actually having access to the system or needing to do a goods receipt or a goods issue. Well, this means that you are able to go free up a license so that for things like management console or point of sale, so that the managers can see what they need, the reports, as opposed to being bogged down, as opposed to hogging a whole management console license or point of sale license, depending on what they need. API authentications, so if there are any external API authentications that need to take place, and whether this is a cloud user or not, as well as whether they have a license or a SAM name. At the bottom over here, you can also enroll a fingerprint. This fingerprint over here is for the URU 4500 4500 digital persona device. It's the one I've seen used most widely across the planet. This is if you have a look at our hardware and software guide, you can actually go and see the exact details of it. It will actually list it there. And if you poke around on our website, the City Access Knowledge Portal, you will be able to also see we do actually have a driver there that is available for download if you do have issues getting the drivers, because I know that can be an issue sometimes. All right. No questions yet? Well, I hope everyone's awake. Either that or otherwise that you have good strong coffee. All right, so now that we've covered security users and employees, the one thing I did point out earlier, and before I dive into security roles, is that if a employee does leave, as they do from time to time, the entire idea is that you don't need to reset up and relicense and reassign rights to the security user. Instead, you can just go and swap out the user for the new employee that's been loaded up, and then they can carry on and process in the as that specific security user with their employee card attached. This means that it's much easier and much quicker to get people up and running in the system, as opposed to actually having to go and redo everything for them every time. And part of that as well extends to the next point that we're headed on to, which is the security role. Now, obviously in sales organizations like we deal with, we end up with a lot of people who go and who perform very similar functions. Cashiers, for instance, are a notable variety of that, where they can go, where every cashier needs to have more or less the same roles and functions in place. They do not need to go and have multiple different roles and functions in place. And once we've opened up the security role and selected it, we can come across assign security rights, and over here you will see that it gives the option to go and assign different access levels throughout the system. Please remember, once again, back to the checkboxes that I pointed out. If a user does not have transaction rights, they will not be able to log into the into the point of sale, no matter how full the actual detailed settings that you give them. Whereas at the same time, if the user does not have a management console rights, they will also be in the same bucket. So with that, let's go a bit deeper into the options over here. So first off, the no security right. Well, I'm pretty sure everyone here knows what no is. So that is just no. You won't get it. You won't be able to see it. You won't be able to use it. That's it. Read only, so you can just see exactly what was there. Very helpful if they do need to just refer back to something but not edit it. Update. Somebody needs to go generate something first, then they can edit it. So in order for them to do, say, a sales order, they can go generate somebody can generate the sales order, but then say the cashier might be only able to edit it. Next, we move on to add update and full. And add update, well, you can add an update. And then I get a lot of questions. I get some questions about why do we have full as well as add an update, and the answer is actually rather simple. The full rights over here is so that you can go and delete certain items in certain places. And please be aware that there are certain areas in the system you will not be able to delete things because they have either synchronized through to other systems, or otherwise we just do not allow it because it will make life much harder for everyone. So so full authorization gives you the right to delete. Not with extreme prejudice, though. With extreme caution, perhaps. So the other thing that does appear over here in the security role is the display profile. Now, this is something that has come up and is actually proving to be very successful, specifically in stopping bored people and bored cashiers. And this over here is best demonstrated if I can head across to operations, inventory, and I'm going to select a product, and in particular go and actually have a look at the actual inventory on the product. Now, as I'm sure that you're aware, if you go and you open up a screen like this, you can see an awful lot of columns over here that the cashier, and I'm keep on picking on them, but they are the ones, they are a large part of our user base. The cashier will not necessarily need to go see all of these columns. For instance, there's no way that they need to go see what transaction types can happen here, purchase tax codes, sales tax codes, lost quantities, last modified, was counted, next count date, minimum stock, max stock considered an MRP, order minimum fulfillment cost margins. All of these, a lot of these extra fields are not necessary for them to see. Indeed, it's almost dangerous for them to see, particularly if it can show anything like product cost or price, because more often than not they get it and then they get confused, and then there's problems, and then it needs to be explained, and then they forget, and then you have to go and do it all again the next week. So the entire idea with this is that, and please bear with me, this is not a demonstration, this is not designed to be a demonstration of the layout designer, but it does come in handy over here. Over here we can go and change our layout, and we can choose to customize it by right-clicking on the columns. And from here we can then start to go and pull across the different columns that we just don't need or want people to see. Now the idea is that once you've removed the columns that you don't want, you can once again right-click, go to your layout, go save, and then save it as either your default display view or your cashier's layout. And if you save it as your cashier's layout, then it will go and limit them to what they see. Now I've deliberately done this over here in Management Console because this is where you can actually edit this. And if I go across to my point of sale, and like in the cooking shows, as they say, here's one I prepared earlier. I select my men's Ralph Lauren suit, and over here I am actually logged in as my cashier. I can come across to my line item information, select inventory search, and you see I have now restricted them down to the bare minimum of columns that they need to see. So instead of them wandering off and looking at other information that they might want to have a look at, I've now restricted them down to exactly what I want. And the better thing is that I've restricted all of my cashiers at one time, at one place, to see exactly what they need, without having to go and reconnect them and redo them one at a time. Right, so that is the case for the security roles. And if I come across and that is defined once again on a per security role basis, where exactly what exactly the cashiers are, what exactly the display profile is, and obviously you can have multiple display profiles for multiple security roles. So obviously only one display profile per security role, but I'm sure you understand what I mean. Because after all, I'm sure that you must be a very intelligent audience, because so far I've had no questions. This either means that I'm doing a really good job, or otherwise everyone's asleep. And I'd hate to think that people, and I don't know which is scarier. All right, but seeing that we're going on and seeing that we are going ahead and with this, let's actually go and head along to authorizations. Now, authorizations actually covers two parts, and the first part that this happens is actually in the retail profile itself. Now, obviously, as I'm sure you all know, you can go and create multiple retail profiles, but hidden deep inside it, a bit further down, we go and we come across the manager override required screen. And this over here covers our basic authorization. Where exactly do you require management override? So for instance, I have got it over here on suspending or recalling a transaction, or on a payment cancellation, but I can put it on anything from product or customer search to reprinting transaction receipts. This allows me to go and control and manage exactly what the POS users are doing at any one point in time, and also get authorization. Because please remember that at the end of the day, while iVend is an excellent computer system going and helping people work, it is not the only system, and it is certainly something that a lot of that that is complemented by a strong management system as well. So the entire idea is that you can go use these to get the manager on site to go and authorize any of these transactions. So for instance, if I were to head across to my point of sale and go suspend recall, you will see it ask me, am I sure I want to suspend? I can go yes. Requires management override. Do I want to continue? Well, in this case, yes. And it will go and ask me for my manager override, and I can type in my manager username or biometrically scan or do my mag swipe card. Any of those are available. And now I have suspended my transaction. But with that also comes with some more questions about, for instance, what if you need multiple levels of authorization? So what happens if you need, say, 2 people to authorize a transaction? And that's where we come to our advanced authorization. And this happens over here under system initialization, enterprise, and we need to go and enable it over here, use advanced authorization. If this is not enabled, well, I'm sure you get the idea. You won't be able to use it. Once it is enabled, however, we can then go and set up additional authorizations and authorization steps, including multiple level authorizations. So with that in mind, let me head across to my authorization template, and in a second I will head across to my authorization stage. So I open up my authorization template, edit, and over here you'll see I've got my template ID and description, as well as are comments required or not, because obviously if they are, we are going to have people putting things in, we do actually want some reasons, or we do normally want some reasons as to why they are going and returning so many things or not. So over here we can go set our originators, and we can add in as many as we need. At the moment I have my cashier set here. So she is the one who's going to initiate the actual process that will trigger the authorization. And then over here I have my authorization stages. Now I can have as many authorization stages as I want, just as I can have as many originators as I want. I am not limited in those. But within the authorization stages, I can go and start to select over here. I can go and start to add in different stage approvers. And once again, I can have as many stage approvers as I want, as well as I can also set how many approvals are required. So I might have 3 stage approvers, but I only require 1 approval, which means that I only need 1 of them to log in to go and actually provide the approval for the specific transaction. Now, if I need to go and have, however, I may need to go and have, say, 1 person to approve it first and then a second person to approve it after him, I can also go and load up separate stages over here to go do that. Now, this means that I've got greater flexibility and greater control over what exactly I want to go and have authorized. And I can do that over here, and I'm sure you'll notice that many of the condition types that are listed here, in fact all of them, are the same as the ones in the retail profile. And of course this is quite deliberate. Now I'm sure the question burning on everyone's minds at the moment is, what happens if I've activated my management overrides in my retail profile and then I activate the same management override in the authorization template? Will they conflict? Will they go and cause the computer to spontaneously shut down? Or what exactly is going to go happen? And I am very glad to report that what will happen is what you should expect from us, is that the authorization template over here, the advanced authorization template, will trigger first. And it will also stand in for the management override that's required on the retail profile. This once you've authorized it over here, it takes priority on the system. So with that in mind, let me actually head back across to my point of sale, and we can go and have a look at one of these transactions I did earlier today. And this is an actual sales refund, excuse me. Okay, and you'll see over here I've got a sale of various promotional items as well as an order and a down payment. So I'm going to go and select over here, maybe for that one, and do a sales refund, and you'll see it will this screen will pop up where I can once again enter in my manager authorization. And remember that I was forced to put in a comment? Well, this is where I put it in. And I can then go select whether it's been approved or rejected, depending on how I feel about the transaction. So once I've done that, I can then go log in. Okay, right there, and I can't refund that because of the promotional item attached to it. Let me go and select another one. Sales refund, and once again you'll see slow motion replay for all of the sports fans out there. And there I can select login. And from here I can then go and complete my refund as planned. I'm just going to use my quick complete because after all we're here for authorizations, not for payment types. So once that's done, Castrol 1 opens, I get my till slip, and we can carry on with the training. So now that we've done that, obviously the entire idea is that you can now start to go and track these things in the system. And with that, we have also gone and included in some nice little reports where we can actually go see the authorization audit report. So we can see what authorizations have gone through the system, at what date, at what time, to go and see exactly who did what, when, where, and how, and why it was authorized. So let me go and run this. And we'll see that as you can see, I've had one or two little test ones before, and here we can go see that the latest one that I did just now, and yes, there you go, 7 p.m. and the transaction refund, returns, which stage, which originator, which authorizer, as well as the status and what comment was put there. So as you can see, you can pull that all up and actually find out who, what, why, and how people are doing things. Right. We also have the report in here where you can go and see which authorizations have been granted to which users. So we can pull up our user authorization report for either a specific user or specific security role, depending on who it is, or a specific function in iVend itself. Once we go and we run that, you can actually go see what rights that they have, read, well, no access, read, update, full, add, update, or full. And that does that for all of the users in the system. So it can turn out to be quite a lengthy report. This one's turning out to about 25 pages. I'm not going to go pull you through the entire thing, but this is available here. And please remember, you can export this to Excel, so it does actually make it quite handy, specifically when you are going and setting these up with customers, so that they can go and see and understand exactly which settings to set. All right, so, and on that note, I see it's now 7:40. I just want to say thank you very much and just open the floor for any questions. If you have any questions, please put your hand up or type it in the questions box and I will be happy to answer. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for going and listening to me rattle on for the past 40 minutes or so. And thanks for going and bearing with me. I hope you enjoy yourselves. And I look forward to going and having another one of these sessions again. Keep well, and I hope to chat to you soon. Okay. All right. If that's it, I'm going to end it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good night. Well, good day or good night, as it may be. Bye.